Combat stations. This is not a drill. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice remained steady despite the adrenaline surge as she issued commands to her crew aboard Platform Sierra. The massive alien vessels dwarfed anything humanity had built, their crystalline structures pulsing with energy signatures that overwhelmed sensors. Rodriguez had run thousands of first contact simulations during her decade in the Orbital Defense Force, but the reality before her shattered every expectation. "Ma'am, they're scanning us," reported Ensign Wu, fingers dancing across his console. "Our countermeasures are holding, but barely." "Maintain calm silence as ordered," Rodriguez replied, studying the tactical display. The alien formation suggested a predatory intelligence, the larger vessels protected by smaller, faster craft arranged in a pattern reminiscent of wolf packs. Not the formation of diplomats or explorers. Aboard the Global Defense Command Station, Admiral Chen faced the increasingly agitated Security Council. Representatives from every major nation crowded the chamber, their faces etched with fear. General Abesi of the African Union slammed his fist on the table. "We must strike first. Show them our strength while we can." "And if they came in peace," countered the Chinese premier, "we would be the aggressors." Chen silenced the debate with a raised hand. "They didn't come in peace," she said quietly, drawing all eyes. "Their formation is offensive. Their approach vector eliminated our early warning systems, and they aren't broadcasting on any recognized peaceful contact protocols." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "But we will not fire first. That's what they expect. Panic, fear, uncoordinated aggression." "Then what?" demanded the American president, uncharacteristically deferential in the face of Chen's calm authority. The admiral's eyes never left the tactical display. "We show them something they've never seen before, a prey that doesn't panic." Deep within the crystalline flagship, Supreme Hierarch Xal observed the primitive human vessels with growing irritation. The lesser species always followed predictable patterns, first confusion, then fear, finally desperate aggression or pathetic surrender. Yet these humans simply maintained position, neither advancing nor retreating. "Their vessels are primitive," reported his tactical officer. "Energy signatures suggest nuclear fission propulsion, chemical weapons, rudimentary shielding." "Then why do they not flee?" Kull demanded. "Scan their world. Show them our power." The scan penetrated Earth's atmosphere, mapping population centers, military installations, power grids, all displayed as potential targets on the command hologram. Still, no response from the humans. "They test my patience," Kull hissed. "Select a minor outpost. Something valuable enough to demonstrate our superiority, but insignificant enough that they understand this is merely a warning." The weapons officer designated the lunar colony, humanity's pride, a settlement of scientists, miners, and their families. "Perfect." Xal approved. "After we destroy it, broadcast the surrender demand again. They will understand their position then." The energy beam lanced from the Dravik's flagship, crossing the void in seconds. The lunar colony erupted in a blinding flash, the explosive decompression scattering debris across the moon's surface. 12,000 human lives extinguished in an instant. On Earth, billions watched in horror as humanity's greatest achievement beyond their planet died in fire. In the command center, Admiral Chen closed her eyes briefly, the only outward sign of grief she permitted herself. "Now, Admiral," asked her communications officer, finger poised above the broadcast control. Chen nodded once. "Now, launch Protocol Ares. All units, execute contingency Theta 9. Across Earth, missile silo doors slid open. Submarine launch tubes prepared specialized payloads. Orbital platforms pivoted weapons arrays. But these weren't the expected nuclear warheads or kinetic penetrators. These were something else entirely, something developed from decades of theoretical xenobiology and materials science. "Send our message," Chen ordered as the first missiles streaked toward the Dravik's fleet. The transmission was simple, broadcast on all frequencies. We've been expecting someone like you for centuries. Welcome to the nightmare we prepared for." Beneath the Martian surface, the reinforced bunker shook with another impact. Dust filtered down from ceiling joints as the Drevix bombardment intensified. Dr. Alexei Volkov steadied his microscope, refusing to be disturbed as he examined cellular degradation in the crystalline sample. "They'd found us," Dr. Miyazaki announced, monitoring the surface sensors. 3 Drevix destroyers directly overhead. Bombardment patterns suggest they're trying to penetrate to this depth. Volkov didn't look up. "How long?" "At current intensity. 4 hours before structural failure." Volkov nodded, making a note on his tablet. "Plenty of time. Begin evacuation sequence. Transfer all data to the Europa facility and prepare the decoy protocol." As his team rushed to comply, Volkov finally straightened, stretching his aching back. The sample under his microscope, a fragment from a damaged Drevix fighter, continued to react to the sonic frequencies they'd been testing. Not enough to weaponize yet, but the pattern was becoming clear. Dr. Volkov called his assistant. "Admiral Chen is on secure channel 1. The scientist activated the encrypted holographic display. Chen's face appeared, looking tired but alert. "Report, Doctor." "Their crystalline matrix is unlike anything in our xenobiology models," Volkov explained, "but it follows consistent patterns. When exposed to specific harmonic frequencies, molecular bonds destabilize. We're still mapping the exact resonance parameters." "How soon can we deploy?" Volkov hesitated. 2 weeks for a proof of concept. A month for deployment-ready systems. Chen's expression didn't change. "You have 10 days. The Drevix have begun systematic destruction of major cities. Berlin fell this morning." The connection ended before Volkov could respond. He turned to his team, now waiting for instructions. "Change of plans. We evacuate in 2 hours. Take only the harmonic resonator and core samples." He pointed to 3 researchers. "You 3, proceed to Europa as planned with the primary data. Then to the others. The rest of us are diverting to Titan." "Titan?" questioned Miyazaki. "But the facilities their air. Primitive." Volkov finished for her. "But they have something we need. Acoustic engineers from the Deep Sea Communication Project." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Major Darius Wade led his pilots through their 20th combat simulation of the day. The hangar bay of Asteroid Base Mongoose hummed with activity as engineers modified the squadron's fighters with technology that hadn't existed a week ago. "They adapt collectively, but fail individually," Wade explained, highlighting tactical displays for his pilots. "Their ships move like a school of fish. Perfect coordination based on shared sensory input. But when isolated..." He played footage from a recent skirmish near Venus. A human fighter had managed to separate a Drevix scout from its formation. The alien vessel's movements became erratic, its responses delayed. "They rely on distributed processing," continued Wade. "Networked intelligence rather than individual decision-making. Our job is to exploit that weakness." Lieutenant Carter, the squadron's youngest pilot, raised her hand. "But sir, their weapons still outclass ours by orders of magnitude. Even isolated, 1 Drevix fighter can destroy 3 of ours." Wade nodded grimly. "That's why this isn't about winning battles. It's about gathering data." He activated a holographic projection of the solar system, highlighting dozens of small engagements. "Every skirmish feeds our central eye. Every Drevix response teaches us something. We're mapping their collective neural patterns, finding the blind spots." "And then?" asked another pilot. Wade's expression hardened. "And then we hit them where they can't adapt. All at once, across their entire network." He looked at each pilot in turn. "Half of you won't survive the next month. But what we learn from each engagement will ensure humanity does." As the squadron returned to their simulators, Wade received a priority transmission from Admiral Chen. New orders, along with data from Dr. Volkov's team. "Major," Chen's recorded message stated, We've identified a weakness. Prepare your squadron for Operation Dissonance. Details follow. Wade scanned the attached files and felt, for the first time since the invasion began, a flicker of genuine hope. The Europa research station had never been designed for its current purpose. Originally built to study the moon's subsurface ocean, its laboratories now housed humanity's most crucial xenobiological research. Dr. Volkov adjusted the sound-dampening field around his workstation and gestured to the technician. Increase amplitude by 20%. The sonic emitter hummed, its frequency imperceptible to human ears. On the observation plate, the Drevic's crystalline fragment trembled, then developed a hairline fracture that spread like lightning across its surface. Record that frequency, Volkov ordered, leaning closer to examine the pattern of breakage. And bring in the larger sample. 2 technicians wheeled in a containment unit housing a fragment of Drevic's hull material recovered from a downed fighter. This piece was the size of a dinner plate, its crystalline structure glimmering with internal energy, even days after being separated from its power source. Same frequency, double amplitude, Volkov instructed. The results exceeded expectations. The larger fragment didn't just crack, it shattered explosively, fragments pinging against the containment field. Volkov's exhausted face broke into a rare smile. We found their resonant frequency, their entire biology, their technology, their weapons, all based on the same crystalline matrix. He turned to his communication specialist. Get me a secure link to Admiral Chen, then to the Venus facility. Millions of kilometers away, deep in the carbon dioxide clouds of Venus, Zora Washington directed her team from the repurposed atmospheric research platform. The facility's isolation had initially been its primary attraction. Now it served as the perfect hiding place for humanity's most accomplished hackers. Their encryption is elegant but fundamentally predictable, Zora explained, projecting the Drevic's communication protocols onto the main screen. Look at the pattern repetition. Their entire system is built on crystalline computing, perfect mathematical precision, but zero creativity. They don't expect to be hacked, added her lieutenant, a former rival named Marcus Chen. No relation to the admiral. Why would they? No species they've encountered has managed it before. Zora's fingers danced across the holographic interface, rearranging code segments. That's their mistake. Human computing is messy, redundant, filled with patches and workarounds, because we expect to be hacked. We build with our weaknesses in mind. The decryption algorithm finally stabilized, providing a real-time feed of Drevic's communications across the solar system. The room fell silent as they realized what they were seeing. "My God," whispered Marcus. "We can see everything. Fleet movements, resource allocations, command structures." Zora nodded grimly. "And they have no idea we're listening." She highlighted a section of data. "Look here, they're transferring protection resources from their communication hubs to reinforce ground forces. They think the biggest threat is our conventional military. So their network is exposed. Increasingly." Zora pulled up another display showing Drevic's communication nodes throughout the solar system. "And I've been working on something more than passive monitoring." She opened a code repository labeled KRMA. "Is that what I think it is?" Marcus asked, eyes widening as he scanned the code. "A polymorphic viral payload designed to infiltrate their network," Zora confirmed. "Not to shut it down. That would be detected immediately. Instead, it watches, learns, and makes subtle adjustments to their communications. Messages delayed by milliseconds, coordinates shifted by fractions, authentication protocols periodically requiring redundant confirmation. Death by 1,000 cuts," Marcus realized. "Exactly. By the time they detect something's wrong, their entire command structure will be compromised." Zora received an incoming transmission notification. "Secure communication from the Mars facility. It's Dr. Volkov." She accepted the call, and Volkov's tired face appeared on screen. "We've identified the resonant frequency that destabilizes their crystalline structure," he announced without preamble. Zora's expression shifted to one of predatory satisfaction. And we've broken their encryption. We can access their entire network. For the first time since the invasion began, the two project leaders allowed themselves to feel the emotion they'd suppressed for weeks. Hope. Now, said Volkov, we need to coordinate with Admiral Chen. It's time to move from defense to offense. 6 months into the occupation, New York's skyline had been transformed into a crystalline mockery of its former self. Dravik structures towered over the ruins of human architecture, their translucent surfaces reflecting sunlight into prismatic weapons that could blind the unwary. From his command center in the repurposed United Nations building, Supreme Hierarch Xal surveyed the holographic display of Earth's conquered territories. Begin global resource extraction, he ordered, satisfaction evident in his resonant voice. Prioritize rare earth elements and uranium deposits. His second-in-command, Sub-Hierarch Trell, approached with a data crystal. The human resistance continues to disrupt operations in 16 sectors, Hierarch. Casualties exceed acceptable parameters in the Eurasian region. Xal dismissed this with a contemptuous gesture. Acceptable deviation. Their coordination diminishes with each passing cycle. Deploy harvester units as scheduled. What Xal couldn't see were the data streams flowing from his own command systems. Every decision, every deployment order, every status report silently mirrored to hidden human receivers through Zora Washington's now mature KRMA virus. The Dravik's encryption remained unbroken to all appearances, even as it leaked information like a sieve. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean in a repurposed mining facility, Admiral Chen studied the global holographic display with her senior staff. Red markers indicated Dravik's installations, blue showed human resistance cells, and yellow highlighted critical infrastructure targets. Dr. Volkov, status report, Chen requested. The scientist's hologram appeared, his appearance even more gaunt than 6 months ago. Production of sonic disruptors has reached 90% of targets. We've miniaturized the technology enough for individual weapon deployment and scaled up for area denial applications. Ms. Washington. Zora's hologram materialized next to Volkov's. KRMA has achieved 97% penetration of their network. We now control significant portions of their communication infrastructure without their knowledge. The system is ready for active interference on your command. Chen nodded, her expression revealing nothing of the emotions churning beneath. Major Wade. The fighter squadron commander appeared, his hologram showing the scars of recent combat. Strike teams are positioned throughout the system. All pilots are trained on the new weapons systems and tactical protocols. Chen surveyed her team. The best minds humanity had to offer, working in harmony across disciplines that had never before needed integration. Physicists alongside hackers, soldiers beside sound engineers, civilians coordinating with military. The Draviks believe they've won, Chen said quietly. Their arrogance is our opportunity. For 6 months, we've sacrificed, gathered data, and prepared while appearing defeated. She straightened, her voice taking on the timbre of command. That ends today. Initiate Operation Stiletto. Throughout the solar system, the counterattack began with silence rather than thunder. On the primary Dravik's communications hub in Earth orbit, a maintenance drone that had been operating without inspection for months connected to the central processor. The drone's systems had long since been compromised, hiding within its memory core Zora Washington's masterwork virus. As it connected to perform routine diagnostics, KRMA unfurled into the Dravik's network. The virus didn't attack. Not yet. First, it watched, gathering data for precisely 3.7 seconds. It identified critical nodes, command pathways, authentication protocols. Then, with surgical precision, it began making subtle adjustments. A transmission from Lunar Command to the Pacific Fleet delayed by 0.3 seconds. Authentication protocols requiring redundant confirmation where none had been needed before. Navigational coordinates shifted by fractional degrees, not enough to cause crashes, just enough to create inefficiency and confusion. Simultaneously, across Earth and throughout the solar system, Resistance cells activated sonic disruptors hidden in ventilation systems, sewers, and abandoned buildings. The devices emitted frequencies inaudible to humans, but devastating to Dravik's crystalline biology. In the New York Command Center, a Dravik's communications officer reported the first anomalies. Transmission latency detected in Sector 7. Authentication protocols showing irregularities. Cell frowned. Run diagnostics. System reports optimal function. Hierarchy. The officer replied. Confusion evident. Yet delays persist. Another officer clutched suddenly at his torso, his crystalline form developing visible fractures. Hierarchy. Something is wrong. He collapsed before finishing the sentence, his body shattering upon impact with the floor. Tull rose in alarm as more officers began showing signs of distress. What is happening? The answer came too late as the integrated attack accelerated. Communication failures cascaded through the Dravik's network. Sonic disruption intensified, targeting the specific resonant frequencies Dr. Volkov had identified. And across the solar system, human fighters launched from hidden bases, armed with weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses humanity had spent 6 months cataloging with patience and precision. The turning point had arrived. From her command center hidden in the hollowed-out asteroid designated Artemis, Admiral Chen watched as Operation Thunderclap unfolded across the solar system. The main display showed hundreds of human vessels emerging from concealment, some from the dark side of moons, others rising from gas-giant atmospheres, still more decloaking from the asteroid belt. All squadrons report ready, announced her tactical officer, Commander Ramirez, waiting for your command. Chen took a moment to absorb the significance of this moment. 6 months of preparation, countless sacrifices, all culminating in humanity's coordinated response. She opened a channel to all forces. This is Admiral Chen. For 6 months, we have watched our homes burn. We've lost friends, family, entire cities. But we haven't lost ourselves. She paused, letting her words reach every pilot, every soldier, every resistance fighter across Earth and beyond. Today, we show the Dravik's what humans do best: adapt, overcome, and turn the tables when everyone thinks we're beaten. Execute Thunderclap. Good hunting. Earth's atmosphere rippled with activity as resistance cells activated simultaneously. In the ruins of Shanghai, maintenance worker Jin Wei triggered sonic disruptors hidden in subway tunnels directly beneath the Dravik's regional command center. The devices had been smuggled in piece by piece over months, assembled in darkness by engineers working from memory. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Dravik's soldiers collapsed mid-stride, their crystalline forms developing fractures that spread like lightning. Those near the epicenter shattered completely. Those on the periphery staggered in obvious agony. In Lagos, 12-year-old Ada Bayo Okafor released swarms of modified nanodrones from hidden compartments throughout the refugee sector. The tiny machines, disguised as indigenous insects, dispersed sonic emitters too small for Dravik scanners to detect. Each drone alone was insignificant. Together, they created overlapping fields of destructive resonance that brought down the occupation force's communication spire. Outside Moscow, Irina Petrova, formerly a wheat farmer, now resistance cell leader, checked her watch and nodded to her team. Varied electromagnets, powerful enough to disrupt Dravik's energy systems, activated precisely as a patrol passed overhead. The aliens' personal shields flickered and died, leaving them vulnerable to the conventional ambush that followed. In orbit, Major Wade led Mongoose Squadron in the first direct assault on a Dravik's dreadnought. His fighter, modified with technology reverse-engineered from downed alien craft, dove straight for the massive vessel's command section. Remember your training, he instructed his pilots. Target the frequency nodes we identified. Disrupt their coordinated defense first, then hit propulsion systems. The squadron split into 3 attack groups, each targeting a different subsystem with precisely calibrated sonic torpedoes. The Dravik's responded with coordinated point defense, But the coordination faltered as Zora's KRMA virus introduced microsecond delays into their targeting systems. What should have been an impenetrable defensive screen developed gaps. Tiny, momentary windows of opportunity that the human pilots, with their genetically hardwired capacity for improvisation, exploited ruthlessly. In the New York Command Center, Supreme Hierarchal watched in growing horror as 37% of his occupation forces went dark in the first hour of the human counterattack. Impossible, he whispered, unable to comprehend the sudden reversal. How could they coordinate on this scale? How could they know exactly where to strike? Sub-Hierarch Trull's voice shook as he reported, "Hierarch, we've lost contact with the Luna base. The European command centers are under simultaneous attack. Our fleet coordination is fragmenting." The truth would have been incomprehensible to the hierarchical Dravik's mind. Humanity's counterattack hadn't been designed by a single strategic genius, but by millions of minds working in concert. Resistance fighters had submitted tactical observations to distributed networks. Engineers had contributed innovation through anonymous channels. Even children had participated, their unconventional thinking channeled through what appeared to be strategy games, but were actually complex distributed problem-solving systems. As tactical displays showed more Dravik's positions falling to the coordinated assault, Kjell faced the unthinkable. Defeat. "Prepare the lunar base," he ordered, his voice hollow. "We must regroup and adapt." But adaptation was humanity's strength, not theirs, a lesson the Draviks were learning too late. "They're running," Major Wade reported, his voice tight with controlled excitement as his squadron pursued Dravik ships retreating toward Luna. The tactical display showed hundreds of alien vessels breaking orbit, abandoning Earth after centuries of unbroken conquest across multiple star systems. Admiral Chen's response came through with perfect clarity despite the millions of kilometers separating them. "Let the smaller craft go. Focus on the command vessels. I want Kjell's ship intact if possible." "Understood, Admiral." Wade signaled to his pilots, directing them to ignore the fleeing support craft and concentrate fire on the larger command ships. Across Earth's surface, retreating Dravik's forces left devastation in their wake. The crystalline structures they had erected in major cities, once symbols of conquest, now their last vengeful act, began to destabilize, emitting pulses of energy that triggered localized earthquakes. In Paris, Lieutenant Sophia Bertrand received the evacuation alert just as the Eiffel Tower's crystalline reconstruction began to vibrate ominously. Her team had been working to preserve cultural artifacts from the Louvre, paintings, sculptures, and manuscripts hidden from Dravik's forces who systematically destroyed symbols of human achievement. "Forget the artifacts," she shouted as her team struggled with crates of irreplaceable art. "Get the people out. Move to Sector 5. The choice proved prophetic. Minutes later, the Dravik spire collapsed in a blinding flash of energy, vaporizing the museum and surrounding blocks, but missing the residential district where thousands of civilians had been evacuated. This pattern repeated worldwide. The Draviks expected humans to protect infrastructure, history, and material wealth at the cost of lives. They consistently miscalculated, watching in incomprehension as humans abandoned priceless cultural treasures to save ordinary citizens. On Luna, Supreme Hierarchal strode through the fortified command center buried beneath the regolith of the Mare Imbrium. Holographic displays showed the systematic collapse of the Dravik's occupation force throughout the solar system. "The gravity loom," he commanded, gesturing to the massive device that dominated the central chamber. "Begin the activation sequence." Sub-Hierarch Trell hesitated visibly. "Hierarch, the weapon has never been deployed against an inhabited world. The consequences are irrelevant." Kjell cut him off. "If we cannot have this system, neither shall they. The humans have earned the honor of extinction." The gravity loom, a technology the Draviks had developed but never deployed, began to power up, its crystalline components pulsing with energy. When fully activated, it would generate a gravitational distortion powerful enough to alter Earth's orbit, rendering the planet uninhabitable through catastrophic climate change. Aboard her flagship approaching lunar orbit, Admiral Chen reviewed the energy readings with growing alarm. Dr. Volkov had been transferred to her command ship specifically for this phase of the operation, and his analysis confirmed their worst fears. "It's a gravitational weapon of unprecedented power," the scientist explained, pointing to the energy signatures. "Based on these readings, they could destabilize Earth's orbit or even fracture the planetary crust." Chen nodded grimly. "Then we don't wait for reinforcements." She turned to her tactical officer. "Prepare the assault team. Priority 1 is neutralizing that weapon." The Lunar Assault Force assembled in the launch bay, an elite group selected from special forces worldwide. Among them stood Lieutenant Maya Okafor, a structural engineer with no combat experience beyond the basic training all civilians had received after the invasion began. "Why am I here?" she asked the commander, adjusting her unfamiliar combat exoskeleton. "Because you understand gravitational engineering," he replied simply. "If we can't destroy that weapon conventionally, we'll need someone who can identify structural weaknesses." As the assault shuttles launched toward the lunar surface, Okafor studied the limited schematics they had obtained through intercepted Drevix communications. The gravity loom's design was elegant but alien, its purpose horrifying. The battle for the lunar base began with surgical precision. Human forces breached the outer defenses using the sonic technology developed by Dr. Volkov's team. But as they pushed deeper into the complex, resistance stiffened. The Drevix fought with the desperation of cornered predators, no longer the confident conquerors they had been 6 months earlier. Lieutenant Okafor, separated from her squad during an ambush, found herself following emergency schematics toward the central chamber. Through a combination of luck and the chaos created by the human assault, she advanced undetected through maintenance corridors until she reached the loom's control room. Through an observation port, she saw Supreme Hierarchal supervising the weapon's activation sequence. The massive crystalline structure pulsed with increasing energy, its components aligning to focus gravitational force. Okafor assessed her situation with the clarity of an engineer. The control room was heavily guarded. The weapon was minutes from activation, and she had only 2 sonic grenades remaining. A structural analysis of the chamber revealed the critical node, where the power regulation systems connected to the main emitter. Damaging that junction would cause a feedback loop, imploding the weapon rather than allowing its energy to target Earth. But reaching that node meant entering the chamber itself, with no possibility of escape afterward. Okafor thought of her twin daughters, evacuated to the Mars colony in the first week of the invasion. She had promised to return to them. Now she made a different calculation, one that would break that promise but ensure they had a world to live in. Her final transmission to Admiral Chen was brief. "Tell my daughters I figured it out." Then she breached the chamber, sonic grenades primed. Supreme Hierarchal regained consciousness in a chamber unlike any he had experienced in 3 millennia of existence. No crystalline architecture, no resonant harmonics, just flat, dampened surfaces that absorbed sound rather than channeling it. The room's design itself was a prison to a being whose species communicated partially through crystalline resonance. Pain radiated through his damaged form. The human female's attack had not only destroyed the gravity loom, but had severely compromised his molecular cohesion. Without treatment, decrystallization would begin within days. A slow, excruciating death as his consciousness remained intact while his body disintegrated particle by particle. The door opened, and a human entered alone. Not a soldier or interrogator as Saul expected, but the thin, exhausted scientist he had glimpsed in intercepted communications, Dr. Alexei Volkov. "You are awake," Volkov said simply, pulling a chair close to Xal's containment field. "Good. We have much to discuss." "Discussion is irrelevant," Saul replied, his translator converting the crystalline vibrations of his speech into human language. "Execute me and be done." Volkov shook his head. That is not our way. At least, not the way we choose. He placed an object on the table between them, a shard of Dravik's technology, its crystalline structure complex and beautiful. This is remarkable engineering, Volkov said, genuine admiration in his voice. The molecular alignment, the energy transmission properties, we've never seen anything like it. Saul remained silent, trying to comprehend this strange approach. Was this psychological torture? A way to extract information? Over the next hours, Volkov asked questions that confused the hierarchy. How did Dravik's society function? What art forms did they practice? How had their understanding of crystalline physics evolved? The questions seemed irrelevant to military interests or conquest. Days passed. Other humans joined these sessions. Engineers asked about Dravik's propulsion systems, not to weaponize them, but to understand the principles. Doctors inquired about Dravik's biology with apparent concern for Xal's deteriorating condition. A linguist spent hours working to improve the translation systems. Most perplexing were the children. Young humans brought under guard to ask questions no adult would consider. Do Draviks have favorite colors? Do you dream? Why are you so sparkly? During one session, a small human female asked, "Were you always a soldier, or did you want to be something else when you were little?" The question triggered memory fragments from Xal's early formation phase, when he had resonated most strongly with artistic crystalline patterns rather than military formations. A forgotten aspiration buried beneath millennia of conquest. In the 7th week of captivity, Volkov arrived with something new. A small device he placed near Xal's containment field. "We've been studying your cellular degradation," the scientist explained, activating the device. "This is an experimental resonator that might help." The chamber filled with a harmonic frequency that made Xal's damaged form tingle with unexpected relief. The constant pain diminished as the sound waves stabilized his molecular structure. "Why?" Xal demanded, genuinely confused. "Why expend resources to preserve an enemy?" "Because understanding is worth more than revenge," Volkov replied. "And because we've learned something crucial from you." He explained what the research teams had discovered. Dravik's conquests weren't driven by ideology or inherent aggression, but biological necessity. Their crystalline biology required specific rare minerals to maintain cohesion. Without regular infusions of these elements, their entire species faced extinction through molecular degradation. "You consume worlds because you must," Volkov said. "But what if there was another way? The resonator stabilizing you now is the prototype. We believe we can synthesize the elements your biology requires." For the first time in his existence, Supreme Hierarch Xal, conqueror of 17 worlds, destroyer of countless civilizations, confronted a possibility his species had never considered. That conquest might not be the only path to survival. "Why would you help the species that tried to exterminate you?" he asked. Volkov's answer was simple: "Because that's what makes us human." Meanwhile, across Earth and the solar system, scattered Dravik's forces continued fighting, not understanding that surrender was possible. Their cultural programming allowed only victory or death. Admiral Chen, watching the conflict's resolution from Orbital Command, issued a radical order: deploy contact teams with sonic stabilizers to all remaining Dravik's concentrations. Offer them surrender with molecular stabilization. Her officers exchanged shocked glances. "You want to help them?" asked her second in command. "I want to end this war," Chen replied. "And I want them to understand exactly who defeated them. Not just our weapons, but our capacity for something they've never considered: mercy." 5 years after the invasion, New Geneva gleamed in the spring sunlight, a city of impossible architecture. Human and Dravik's design principles merged in structures that neither species could have created alone. Glass and steel interwoven, with crystalline matrices that captured sunlight and transformed it into brilliant displays of color and energy. The Central Plaza hosted the first interspecies cooperation summit, attended by representatives from Earth's nations and the Drevix Reformist Collective. The city still bore deliberate scars from the war, craters preserved as water features, damaged buildings partially restored and partially maintained as monuments. Ambassador Helena Chen, formerly admiral, watched from a balcony as a remarkable scene unfolded below. A group of Drevix younglings, their crystalline bodies refracting sunlight into dancing patterns, played an improvised game with human children who chased the light displays across the plaza with shrieks of delight. "They still don't understand us," came a familiar voice. Xal, now called the Reformer by his people, moved to stand beside her. His once damaged crystalline form now shimmered with health, stabilized by the molecular harmonization technology developed by Earth's scientists. "Which part confuses them most?" Chen asked, knowing there were many candidates. "That you didn't exterminate us when you had the chance," Xal responded. "The Drevix traditionalists believe it proves human weakness. The reformists believe it proves human strength." He paused, watching the children play. "I believe it simply proves you are different." Chen nodded, understanding the profound nature of this admission from a being whose species had, until recently, divided the universe into only two categories: Drevix and conquerable. "The integration problems on Earth's southern continent are improving," Xal continued. "The hostility toward Drevix settlers has decreased by 17% since the completion of the desalination project. This was the pattern that had emerged over 5 years, practical cooperation slowly building trust. Drevix engineering, once focused entirely on conquest, now helped address Earth's environmental challenges. In return, humans shared molecular stabilization technology that freed the Drevix from their resource-driven expansion." "And the situation among your people?" Chen asked. Xal's crystalline form dimmed slightly, their equivalent of a frown. "The traditionalist faction grows increasingly isolated, but their rhetoric intensifies. They view cooperation as heresy against our conquering nature." Neither mentioned what both knew: that for many humans and Drevix, cooperation remained unthinkable. Millions had died during the occupation. Some wounds wouldn't heal in a single generation. A young aide approached, her expression urgent. "Ambassador Chen, we've received a priority communication from Outpost Horizon at the edge of the solar system." Chen and Xal moved quickly to the secure communications center beneath the summit venue. The holographic display activated, showing a research station officer whose face reflected barely controlled panic. "Ambassador, we've detected multiple wormhole signatures approaching from the direction of the Sagittarius Arm. Configuration matches historical records of Vorax war fleets." Xal's crystalline structure pulsed with alarm. "Vorax," he said, the translation system unable to fully convey the dread in his resonant tones. "Even the Drevix Empire avoided their territory. They are consumption incarnate. They don't conquer worlds. They devour them completely." Chen's expression remained composed, but her eyes hardened with determination. "How long do we have?" "At current velocity, they'll reach Mars orbit in 14 days. Chen turned to Xal. "Will the traditionalists fight alongside us against a common threat?" The former hierarch considered for a moment. "Against the Vorax? Yes. Even they recognize extinction when they see it." "Then we have work to do," Chen said, already activating the emergency protocols developed for exactly this scenario. Within minutes, alerts spread throughout Earth and the colonies, mobilizing the Joint Human Drevix Defense Force. In a secure chamber beneath the summit, Dr. Volkov, now head of xenobiology integration, met with his combined team of human and Drevix scientists. "The Vorax biology is primarily plasma-based," he explained, displaying the limited data they had. "Their ships are essentially extensions of their bodies." A young Drevix scientist raised a crystalline appendage. "If we modify the resonance technology to target plasma containment frequencies." Volkov nodded. "Completion unnecessary." "Exactly. Let's get to work." Meanwhile, Near Jupiter's orbit, the first joint human-Drevix defense fleet assembled. Vessels of both designs moving in harmonized formations. The flagship Unity, a hybrid vessel combining human adaptive systems with Drevix power generation, led the armada. On its bridge, Commander Elena Okafor, daughter of Lieutenant Maya Okafor, who had sacrificed herself on the moon, stood beside her Drevix second-in-command, Sub-Collective Leader Verix. Status report. Okafor ordered, surveying the tactical display showing hundreds of vessels forming a defensive perimeter. All ships report ready, Commander, Verix replied, his crystalline form resonating with the ship's systems in ways that enhanced its performance beyond either species' original design parameters. Okafor addressed the combined fleet, her mother's determination evident in her voice. 5 years ago, our species were locked in a battle for survival. Today, we stand united against a threat to all life in our system. The Vorax believe they're hunting easy prey, isolated worlds they can consume one by one. She paused, looking at Verix, who completed her thought. They have no concept of what awaits them. Not just humans, not just Drevix, but something new, something stronger than either could be alone. As the fleet prepared to engage the wormhole drive that would position them to intercept the Vorax armada, Okafor felt a strange sense of completion. Her mother had died believing she was saving Earth from destruction. She couldn't have imagined that her sacrifice would lead not just to survival, but to a transformation that might ultimately save many worlds beyond their own. "Wormhole drive engaging," announced the navigation officer. The Unity and its escort fleet vanished in a shimmer of distorted spacetime, carrying with them humanity's greatest strength, not its weapons or technology, but its relentless ability to transform enemies into allies and crises into opportunities.